It's Cyndi with Mimi's Treasure Cottage, and this is a exciting video for me as I have invited George, the Antique Nomad, to come and join me today and help me out with doing some appraisals on my estate, my dad's estate. So you'll be seeing this as part of that video series. Yay! All righty, I did it. I'm really pleased that I was able to do that. Okay. So George is here with me today, and we're going to go through some things from my dad's estate. The original plan was to actually take George through the estate while I was there. Unfortunately, there was some major technological issues with that, and that just wasn't going to work. So I have filmed some things, and we'll be sharing that, and then George can go with. Yeah. You're muted again, George.
Okay. You sounded great before, and now you sound really staticky.
Do I? Let's see if we can fix my...
Now it sounds better. Maybe it was hair.
Okay.
Maybe it was hair against the microphone or something.
There we go. Yeah, I usually always have my
yes.
hair up, but I decided to do something a little different.
I think you look good. But I think you better redo the intro.
Anyway, so yeah, I was going to work with George at my dad's estate and just walk around with him using my phone. And I had a friend was going to come over to do close-ups and everything. And we just discovered that was not going to work out, the big technological problems there. So, but I have George with me here now, and I am going to share my videos that I took at my dad's house as I was walking around, and we can talk about things as we go. And it's kind of cool. I tested this out earlier, so I know that I can play the video and then I can pause it as need be. I tried to only film things that I thought I didn't know a whole lot about and that I thought I might want some more information on, so as to not overwhelm us. Okay. Do you see this now?
I do.
Okay.
Ah, yes, bellows.
Bellows, that's the word I couldn't find. So this is the newer set of bellows. And like I said, I don't know a whole lot about it, but the next one that I'm going to show you is much older. And
oh yes, big difference in those. That clearly is hand hewn as opposed to the other ones. We see the other ones with the brass ship on it quite a lot. They were popular in the 60s because there was a lot of interest in Victoriana, and the ones that you have there that are hand hewn are Victorian. They are primarily decorative. I do see some holes in them, so they'd still blow some wind, but they wouldn't work too well in the fireplace. The 1960s era ones, I typically see retail in a $25 to $30 range on those. But the Victorian ones, I would expect to, and I would say Victorian because it looks like the tacking is all pretty uniform, so I don't think it's going to go back to Revolutionary War times, but I would say you're looking at mid to late 1800s. And my feeling about those, the primitive collectors like them, I think you're probably looking at a retail value in that condition, probably in the $85 to $100 range. Now, we are talking about an estate sale, and so it depends somewhat on the area you're in. My typical rule of thumb with antiques and vintage when I price for an estate sale is to price about half of what I think the antique store retail would be. That seems to be the sweet spot.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you that. And actually, it just occurred to me as I'm doing this, because when my friend was going to join me at the house, we were going to take Post-it notes and then hit the stuff with the Post-it notes so I wouldn't have to go back through the whole video and rewatch. So I am going to get a piece of paper to write some of this down with so that I don't have to rewatch the whole video. Hang on just a second.
Let me do just a little bit of a preface so that some general things like what I was just telling you. So when I'm asked to help people price for an estate sale, what I'm going to do is, when I've been hired to do this before, and I've been doing this about 20 years, I will tell you what I think the retail price for the item in your area would be, and then based on that, what I think you might want to price it at for an estate sale. But as a general rule of thumb, if it's antique or vintage, we're looking at about half of what the retail value would be is typically the sweet spot at an estate sale, because you typically just have a weekend to sell everything. And that's a low enough price that it's fair for dealers, resellers, curious neighbors, but it is also fair to you. It's not a fire sale price.
Okay.
Now, one other thing I should mention as well is, you know your local market the best. And so, say, for example, you have something that is you're in the Cleveland area. If you have something that is specific to the Cleveland area, for example, then that might go a little bit higher because of where you are. Or, for example, if you have a situation where every house in the neighborhood, every third house was built the same, and every third house has a notch next to the fireplace, and there's this piece of furniture that fits it perfectly, and it could fit any house in your neighborhood. Well, the neighbors don't have to buy a truck, and they're going to have the same house. So they're going to see that and say, oh, that would be useful to me in that space. Those things, you can maybe push the prices a little bit higher. So that's just something to consider. So I'll try to give you information, but ultimately you'll have to use a little bit of logic in terms of how to apply it.
Okay, very good. Okay, this is another thing. This is a vintage smoke stand, and I wasn't really sure about this. Now, the ashtray on the top is actually broken, so.
Yes, and it's a replacement anyway, but the ashtrays aren't too hard to find. They were usually just a simple thing. Sometimes they'd be a Depression era green color, like the uranium glass, because that definitely, with that big rondelle in the middle, is a 1920s piece. And my question is, when you open that, does it have a metal lining inside,
matter
like
of fact,
copper?
let me show you. Hold on. Oops. I wish I could go straight there. I'll open that in a second and show you. There you go.
Ah, very good. Okay, so it's tin lined, and that's pretty useful as the humidor. People like these. I would expect, usually when I have these to sell, I price them in my antique stores and shops and sales at about $100, $100 to $120. Since the ashtray's gone, I would think for an estate sale price, probably in the $50 range.
Okay. Thank you. Do that while I talk to you. So it's round, it's spherical, and it looks like it has a dark color on the outside, and then it's like an orangish color on the inside, and then a lighter color after that. So I wasn't really sure what that was. All right, here we go. Let's go back, because I think we missed that whole part where I was showing it. There we go. That's the inside of that piece. So it was really odd, but I know I don't know if you've ever watched The Auction Professor. He's on YouTube as well, and he does a lot of interesting bolos, and one of his things had to do with petrified stuff. So when I saw this piece of something that I just thought I might throw in the garbage, because what the heck is it? I thought, oh, I don't know, maybe it's something that we should look into before I throw it out.
Well, I think that's good, because it looks like a petrified seed of some sort. And because you're in Ohio, I'm guessing it might even be an old buckeye, and a very, very ancient one at that. The truth is, those things are made into other objects. I think that if you price that in the $5 to $10 range as a curiosity, that somebody might just pick it up.
Okay. Let's see, let's go back. Come back here. Okay. Yeah, very bizarre. All right, this next thing I found in my mother's jewelry box, and it actually is very substantial. The feel of the metal is very substantial, and I'm going to turn it over probably in a second and show you the back side. So that's what that is. Yeah, I didn't know. It didn't feel like some child's real thin toy. I mean, it probably is, in my thinking, a child's toy, but it was very substantial to the touch. It wasn't, a thin tin type thing.
I do think it's a novelty just because of the expression on the front, but it is heavier and it does not have a safety catch. And that means that it's an older novelty. I would think probably from about 1950. And I do agree. I believe they were made for adults rather than for children. I think those sorts of items, retail is probably around 25 on them. If it was a real Vice Squad badge, the retail would be probably 150. But it because it says Vice Squad in charge of Vice, they're having a little bit of fun. It's more of a thing to wear as a costume item from back then, and those were popular in the 50s and 60s.
This was interesting. It's some sort of a little advertising piece, and it is older, and I'm gonna let the video play out so you can see it. It opens up in like a little bottle opener.
Very good. Yes, that is going to be from right at the end of Prohibition, so right about 1935. And the DeWitt hotels were a pretty big chain, and they advertising pieces like that are popular with people. I sell that little stuff all the time at shows. It sells great online. I would expect that that would sell in the $18 to $24 range in retail land.
Okay. I don't even know. That was like tucked in something. Almost missed it. I'm like, what is this weird thing?
It's great. One thing about estate sales is, little things tucked away are often the things that are overlooked and underpriced. So they are good things to look into when you're prepping an estate.
All right. So I'm not really showing you the jewelry in this jewelry box. Most of this is, in my estimation, and that's from going to different things, it's mostly just junk jewelry. But in a second, I'm going to show you the actual jewelry box itself. That's probably what I'm more interested in knowing about.
Very good. Yes. The box itself is Chinese camphor wood. And camphor wood is a type of wood that is bug resistant. You see a lot of chests made out of that type of wood, and they would make jewelry boxes out of it as well. And when you have that center flip top and the sides that open, when I say Chinese, most of that was being sold out of Hong Kong in about 1950 when they're that style with the red lining and all. Mm-hmm. And I usually see prices retail in the $35 to $45 range on those boxes. And as far as the jewelry goes, what I saw did look like it was just junk jewelry, but when I do an estate sale, I'll take a table and spread that stuff out and put $3 each, $4 each. And it's amazing how much will sell rather than doing just a grab bag. You'll actually make a lot more money that way.
Right, right. Yeah, I kind of, I have it displayed in that box. That box is set open, so people can pick through and pick. I haven't actually tagged, like I'm making signs for a lot of that kind of stuff for prices, so you don't have to individually price things. So like all earrings are this and all, unless I find something good and then I pull it out.
Exactly. When I conduct an estate sale, I do the generic stuff by signs, and I make sure I post them prominently everywhere because people will miss them and be afraid to ask. And I always put at the bottom unless marked, and then you just go through and price the things that are worth more.
Right, right. So hopefully that'll save us some time. All right. Stop. Okay, so I have this lamp, and you've probably seen this lamp 100 times because I know I've seen it before too, but never when I was needing to price it. So
I got $45 for the last one of those I sold, which wasn't too long ago. And yes, they were very popular around 1960, that sort of colonial revival.
Okay. All right, let's go back in. And the cuckoo clock, actually, my sister and that's ours. I just haven't taken it off the wall yet.
Oh, good.
Oh, this I wanted to show you. This actually is going to my nephew. So it's not going to stay in the sale, although it's going to be in the house. So I'm going to wrap it and put a big sign on it and everything. It is a working Victrola. And I'm gonna go in. I'm not gonna play it on the video, but I'll go in and show you in. So it's just, I just thought it would be fun to kind of know the what you know about the Victrola after you see this anyway. But it's not going in the sale.
Does it say under the lid who made it? Is it actually a
Yeah,
Victrola? Or?
it is a Victrola. I'm gonna open it up and show you in
Okay.
a second. I don't know why my video is all screwy.
Very nice. This is a pretty early one. This dates to about 1910. And it's nice because it has the wide raise, as they call it, on the oak before we cut all the big oak trees down. So you'd get that nice American oak. And these vary somewhat depending on the model, but generally speaking, an oak cabinet for a floor model Victrola these days sells retail around 400, 450. It used to be that the people wanted the floor models the most, and nowadays they actually like the tabletop ones because a lot of the people who collect these, they have 3 or 4 floor models and there's only so much room in a house. So these really haven't gone up in value in the last 20 years, but the tabletop models have.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's just nice to. There was a lot of amazing pieces in my family's collection, and we have taken most of them. Actually, my sister and I. Hold on, I want to back this up so you can see this.
Oh, well, that's really good. You know, that stuff is supposed to stay with family if there's interest in it. And then what's left, everyone else can have fun with too.
This piece is another one that would have probably been overlooked. It was upstairs in, my mom had a and it's mine actually, I think in sorry about that. I think I'll be showing you pictures at some point. Of an old bedroom set, an antique bedroom set. And so that back bedroom was filled with a lot of older things. And this is one of those things, and it's something that I would have overlooked. So I don't know, I don't know anything about it. So you're the person to ask about this thing that's been sitting in that room. I don't know where it came from. She usually labeled things that were of family interest, old things, so that we wouldn't throw them out. That piece did not have anything labeled on it, but I don't know what it is.
It's cute, and it's a sewing basket. The what I look at on those is to see whether someone did the lace or the tatting or whatever it's covered in themselves. That one appeared that the edges were very uniform, so I believe that that was machine made, and that would make a difference. And the way that the weave is done, that most likely was done in Asia, and again, probably about 50 to 60 years old. I get the impression, seeing the house, that your folks probably moved in there in the 1960s. Would that be right?
Late 1960s. Yeah,
Yeah.
1968 to be exact.
Very good. Yes, yes, because a lot of the things that you're showing me are things that would have been new or fairly new at that time,
Uh-huh.
and so that falls into place. We have to look for clues like that when we're pricing, because sometimes we can miss things otherwise. I would say that retail on those little sewing baskets, it's about $15.
Cool. All right, this little box, again, this is something that I would have just pitched, but it's older.
Yes, and can you read the top at all? It's a little
I
obscure
can't.
for me. I'm trying to.
There, even when I was looking at it in the camera at the house and trying to zoom in and everything, the print is so faded, it's next to impossible to read the print.
Okay, well, my guess is that it was for needles, probably for sewing. Usually those are little sewing implement boxes. Sometimes they'd be needles for your old Victrola, actually, or that sort of thing. But my sense is that it's a little sewing accoutrement, and they're cute, but because we can't read it, and they were actually, it's very old. I mean, it's probably a true antique, over 100 years old, but because they made a lot of them at the time, they're not worth a lot of money. It might be a $5 retail item.
Okay. Well, that's better than putting a quarter on it, so it's good
That's
thing.
right.
Good to know. My mother loved these lanterns. Now, most of them, because let me give you a little background history on me. I don't know if you've seen how often any of my videos, but I get my love of resale, or not resale, thrifting and vintage and all that. I get that from my mom. And my mom was a yard sale goddess, back before it was a thing.
Cool.
So yeah, so the house is decorated in yard sale chic. So she loved these lanterns, and I'm not sure. I think actually we had one that may have been legit, and my nephew took it. So what else is left here? Some of them I'm even going to show you. Like, I think they're newer, made in China with battery things on the bottom. But I figured I'd put them in here and show you just in case there's one that I don't want me to think it's reproduction and whatever and miss it. But I think that they're all, yeah. What is that one? Made in China. So that one's made in China. I think the other one is, and you'll notice I think there was a battery thing on that one. I think there's a battery thing maybe on this one. Yep, on this one too. So even though they look like they're, and then it goes back to the beginning there. So even though they look like they're vintage and whatever, I don't think that they are. So
No, and with them being made sometime between about 1980 and 1990, I would say roughly. But they were still probably 25 or $30 new. I would think that these days we would, if it's something that you could go get something similar to new, my rule of thumb is price it at about a third of what it would cost someone new. That seems to be the sweet spot to sell a lot of those types of things, because people will recognize that that's a good deal. But again, you're not pricing it at $1. So I would think for an estate sale price, if you price those around $10, I would think that you would sell them. And the older ones, there's certain ones that say Little Wizard and that kind of thing, and they're fairly common, but there are older ones. And then there's railroad lanterns, which are a little different shape than that. So I think you're right about those.
okay.
And I have seen your channel, and I do, my appreciation for thrifting and all of that comes from my mom too, so I relate to that.
It's funny, back in the day, I thought that, here, I'm going to stop there for a minute. It's funny, back in the day, it was like, oh, another yard sale thing. It was awful. We didn't like it. Everything we had was used and from a yard sale or a thrift store and whatever. And it's funny how as we get older, that then is, the thing. Oh, I got to have that. Oh, you got it there. Oh, that's great.
It's really true. Well, first of all, you end up paying the bill, so you appreciate getting something for a better deal. But the other thing is, I have all this appreciation for example, 50s furniture, because even though I wasn't alive in that era, that's what we had when I was a kid. We had a fantastic Formica boomerang shaped coffee table when I was little, and I would kill to have it again. And it was $10 at a thrift store, and it was like, well, it's out of style, but no one wants it and it's cheap. And my dad was in the military, and we were always going to move in a few years, so you didn't buy new things.
Right. It's funny going through this stuff in the estate. There's so many items that had stickers on them from yard sales or wherever that my mom had picked them up, and what she paid for pennies for these things that even I know now are more valuable. So it's very interesting. All right. So this let me show you this plate, this platter. If it'll play. There we go. Now it does have, if you can see, there's some condition issues in it, but this is one that my mom would have. This may even be heirloom, even though she didn't label it as such. But my sister and I we were trying to not take everything in the house because we don't have room for it. So if it wasn't actually labeled with the heirloom stickers that my mom put on everything, we didn't get it. But this is the bottom of that.
Yes, and you see it says Limoges, but it says made in USA, and this throws people a lot of times. But this is right around 1940, so we're looking right before the Second World War, and France has already been invaded by Germany, and we can't get Limoges China anymore. And so American Limoges, as it was called, comes along. And Farberware, which was a metal making company, would work with Cambridge Glass or Triumph that did the Limoges, the American Limoges, and do these aluminum or chrome surrounds for their pieces and then set them in. And that way you'd get a big tray and you were just using a plate to make it. So it was kind of a good look. It was very popular in the late 30s and early 40s. And then, of course, all the aluminum goes to war production. So that's the end of that. In good condition, that would be worth probably $30 on the market today. The hairline really does unfortunately affect it, especially because it's stained. So honestly, retail would probably be half of that, and then you're looking at half of half for estate sale price.
Okay. Nice to know the history, though. I like that.
Okay, well, let's go to that coffee service that I just saw that you had. That is a nice modernist design, and it's interesting to see that because the pattern on the handles matches my mother's silverware that she got in 1970. So it's stainless steel. It's an American company, I believe, and I can't remember which one, but I think it might be Oneida. And in any event, people like the style of those, and they still serve a practical purpose. I see these priced around, again, 30 to 35 retail.
Okay. And the interesting thing is I'll show you in a second, we actually have a bowl that matches that pattern too. So off here to the side that I'm going to show you, it has the same general pattern that the other thing does too.
Those little flowers. Yeah, that's neat. And that would have been the big chip bowl for like a chip and dip or a salad bowl. And that probably would sell for retail on that would probably be about $15 to $20.
Okay. All right, let's move.
Now, there are some of those that look like that from Europe that are really, really valuable, but that one is American, and we were copying the Europeans.
All right, so this, and I'm going to take it out of here and try 100 different ways to show it in a good light. It's a little dusty, too. Hold on. I'll be moving it around to try to make it a little bit easier. So
okay, yeah.
It's missing.
Okay, well, I recognize it. This is American also, and that cranberry flash is a 1960s, and the flowers look like they're hand painted, but it's actually like a screen print. Those little vases like that were made by a couple of different companies. It could be Anchor Hawking. It could be Indiana Glass, and it doesn't really matter much in terms of the value. They sell for about $10 retail. The cranberry flash doesn't do as well as cranberry that's all the way through the glass, and part of that is that you can't dishwash that stuff, and people these days don't like things they have to fuss with necessarily, so that's why it's not more valuable.
I have a funny story. So a lot of my dishware and stuff that's in the house, we are really fortunate of my mom's little quirk, peccadillo. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but when my mom and dad, her thing though, when they moved into the house had a dishwasher, and my mother found that she never used the dishwasher. She didn't like, because you have to rinse them, basically you have to wash the dishes first before you put them in the dishwasher, and she just thought that was a waste of time. So she started storing all of her paperwork, and there was like a filing cabinet for years and years and years. The dishwasher in the kitchen, she'd say, somebody would come over and she'd say, oh, hold on a second, I have that paper or whatever, and she'd open the dishwasher to pull the stuff out. It was funny. So when they redid the kitchen, they redid it. My dad actually custom built all the cabinets, and I think I'll get some pictures of that in a minute. They rebuilt it without a dishwasher, because what's the point? So all of my dishware is in good condition because they didn't have a dishwasher.
Yeah, it's really true. Dishwashers are hard on things, and the truth is nowadays they're better, but back then especially, you basically had to wash the dishes before you put them in the dishwasher, and it was pointless.
Well, I even have to do that now with my own dishwasher. This is going to keep going. With my own dishwasher, I have to do that because it doesn't come off, and I can always tell when somebody else other than myself has the dishes because I have to rewash them. All right, this thing here is very interesting. You know, we saved it because my mother, actually, so going back to another story about my mother was a Depression baby, and she tells stories of an old hollow center table that this is probably more of the Second World War than the Depression, but they used to hoard stuff in the center of this table. And so my mother's just always had been a hoarder of foodstuffs. So we had all kinds of old food related stuff. And so this is one of those things that seemed very much older to me. And I hung on to it because of the canister. And so I just wanted to, ask you about that and talk to you about that. I didn't want to throw it away.
Oh, I think that's cool. Old food packaging does sell. People think it's crazy, but especially if it doesn't have a UPC code, if it's earlier than that, it's got a nostalgic appeal, and it looks cool if you're doing an old kitchen. So people will buy it. Sometimes they pour the contents out and use it to hold something else. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a thing. The one that you had there with the syrup, it had an area code on it, and so that tells me that it was probably 1960s era rather than earlier, and it's a fairly plain label. So honestly, for an estate sale, I'd probably price it at $4 to $6. If you were looking at something earlier though, or something with a really good graphic, some of those can go for big money. There was an Antiques Roadshow where this guy had moved out, and he was young, and it was the Depression hit, and he had to move home, and he brought the hanging wall cupboard with all of the stuff in it from 1931, put it in the basement. It was completely forgotten. And then when, like, 3 generations later, they had an estate sale there, and someone bought the whole thing for $50 with all the contents, and Antiques Roadshow was like, oh, it's all perfect and immaculate, and there's all these brands that went out of business in the Depression, and they valued it at like $1,200.
Wow.
So yeah.
Let's see. There's that. We'll get past that in a second. So what year did the area code start? So you mentioned the area code on this, and what that was.
I think direct dialing happens in the 1950s, where you can start dialing long distance without having to have the operator. They got better signal equipment, and they could actually have you do it yourself instead of
Mm-hmm.
having to call. It used to be if you wanted to call out of town, you had to dial 0, and the operator had to put you through to another town.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right, this next thing is a set of silverware my mom probably thrifted from somewhere. I think it's silver plate, and I think at one time I did look up the name of this, like Rogers, I think, is on this silverware. I'm not even sure if I think I'll turn this over in a second and show you the back, but I am noting that odd discoloration on all of those forks. None of the rest of them had it. Let's see if we can. Oh, it's upside down, but yeah, Rogers.
Oh, that's okay. Yes, that is definitely silver plate. It's shinier compared to sterling, and it looks like it might be. It's not the flare pattern. And I wish I could say I had encyclopedic knowledge of pattern names. There's great books, and you can look them all up. But the truth is that for that service, it's not going to matter a lot in terms of value. There's a few patterns that are really collectible, and there's a whole lot that are just nice to use, and that's a just nice to use one. I typically price sets like that at, it didn't have a lot of serving pieces. So for an estate sale, I would price it around $35, because I find that they sell for about $75 in the stores. So 35 seems to be the magic number for a set like that.
Okay, interesting, because that's kind of what I was thinking without really doing a whole lot of research. All right, so I didn't take this off of it. This is actually above the stove. I didn't take it down, but that's from Denmark, that plate. Without turning it over, I'm not sure what you can tell me about it, but that's up there. And then the thing below it is interesting too. It's a metal utensil thing, I think, namely for decoration. I don't know if you know anything about those things or not.
Oh, sure. The top plate, it looks like at first I thought it was transferware, but it does look like it's either Royal Copenhagen or Bing and Grondel. And I believe that's Frederiksberg Castle, but it is definitely the type of wall plate that people collected in the early 60s. There was a thing called Antiques Magazine in 1961 that really got people interested in those. And so all through the 60s, and that's why you see a lot of the Christmas plates that are dated from the 60s, because everyone got all excited about them for a while. I would price that probably $10 to $12 for the estate sale. They go for about 20 now if they're larger like that. The market's a little oversaturated. And then the cast iron hanging set, it's probably a 1960s or early 70s set, and it is just decorative, but people like that look. And I would think that for an estate sale price, you might price it in the $15 to $18 range, because to buy something new like that would probably set you back about 40 to 45.
Okay. And it actually oops, I don't want to pause that. Last I know, so I cared for my dad for about 6 years before he passed away. And before that, I just was visiting. And my mom got sick about a year earlier than that. So 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, I know that this worked because they used it often. My mom used it often, so I'm assuming that it still works. But thinking that I think we saw that this was like from the 60s, maybe even 70s. You would probably know better, but I have the cookbook too that goes with it.
Oh yeah. No, you're right on because of that avocado color. That's right, about 1970. And that is one of the earlier styles of Vitamix. And those were a really good machine. And in working order, they still sell for good money. I would price that between $40 and $50 for the estate sale. And that might seem like a lot, but honestly, I see them sell online for as much as double that when you take shipping into account. So
Right.
I think that that's a fair price.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, they're really heavy duty.
Yeah, my sister and I both kept looking at it, wondering, like, do you want it? Do I want it? And we finally were like, we just don't want it. It would go in a box somewhere. What's the point? Let somebody enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they use
It's a
it
good
all the time.
thing, though.
Oh, I was just showing you the back of it, since you already know what it is. Let's go back over here. So I don't know if there's anything of any interest in here. Hold on. In that cupboard, but I just kind of, there were a couple of, I think, cheese glasses in here that I didn't know about. So I'm just kind of giving you an overview. Most of that's just newer stuff like Corelle on the right. But these little glasses here, there's a set of 3 of them back there that are very similar, almost identical. So I'm sure you recognize them and can tell me what you...
Yeah, the cheese glasses are swanky swigs, as they were called by Kraft. If they have painting on them, if they have a design, then they're definitely collectible. But if they're plain like that, they don't really go for much.
Okay. $1, $2?
Yeah, I'd say $1.
Okay.
I do a lot of clear glass at 50 cents and $1 these days because clear just isn't popular in the marketplace anymore. Even nice patterns of clear glass with etching from the elegant depression glass days don't sell nearly like they used to. So,
okay. Also in the kitchen, there are 3 of their little custard glass, I guess is what they're called. The white, and it has like the grape kind of pattern on it. And they are uranium glass. They do glow. And I only have 3 of them, but I didn't know if you could give me an idea of what those might be. I don't have a picture, I don't think.
oh, that's fine. Well, definitely write on the tag uranium glass, because people are catching on to that now. And then you might be able to sell them for, I would think maybe $4 to $5 each, because people are just going wild about anything that glows under a black light now, which I think is a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. I'll have to have it at the sale too, in case anybody, you can shine them on there. I did go to your house one day, shining my light on everything, trying to find, is there anything else that glows?
I ran an antique mall in Oregon, and at one time it got dark so early. We closed at 5 and it was already dark, and we sold black lights. And just for fun, nobody had to go home early. We went through the mall, and with the black light, it was amazing how many things glowed. And also, black lights are really good to detect fakes and forgeries and repairs. We found a bunch of stuff that had repairs that was not marked, and we made the dealers mark it repaired, and they weren't happy, but it was true.
Interesting. And since I have you and you're such a fond of knowledge, when I was selling in one of my live sales, I had some Ellie Smith, the black amethyst glass pieces. Somebody told me that some of those can glow. Is that true?
Well, it's funny. They glow, but not really in the way they don't glow a bright green like the uranium glass. They have almost like an orange tinge under a black light. And I had kind of forgotten that. And I was doing something in my garage and had the black light on. I was taking a picture of a depression glass piece that glowed. And I noticed that some of the black had a little bit of an orange tinge, and I'm not sure what it is about that particular color that makes that happen. So I actually need to do a little research.
Yeah, I just thought that was interesting, and I didn't test any of them when they told me that. So, this piece too, I don't know anything about it. It seems to me like it wasn't as old as many of the other things in the cabinet, but I thought it was interesting enough to point it out.
It's cute. It's hand painted, and I believe that those were made in Japan. They just oftentimes had a round paper or oval label on the bottom that would wash off. I think they might be Mikasa stoneware from the early 70s. I'm just starting to see people collect that again, but I don't think it goes for big prices yet.
Mhm.
So I would keep that probably under $5 for estate
Mhm.
sale, but it's cute. Someone might just pick it up. I'm seeing dealers starting to catch on to some of that, especially the brighter colors.
So yeah, there's this little piece. That white on there is really bright. I've never seen anything
Yes.
like it.
Yeah, it's opalescent glass. They would put a chemical in it that would make the edges turn an opalescent white. And that's been a popular thing to do since the Victorian era, at least. But that particular piece looks like a 1930s piece. It's a fairly plain pattern, but it's still retail on that. That would probably be $8 to $10.
Retail.
And you'll see it in various colors where the glass is pink or blue and the edge still goes to the opal.
Yeah, my dad actually worked at the Fenton Glass Company, and I think I've shared that before.
Oh.
So I was really fortunate enough that one year while my dad was still alive, we were down there. This was before Fenton closed. We went there and they were giving tours of the factory and all of that kind of stuff. So I got to go through it with my dad, and he would go and he'd say, and I stood over here waiting for the next job that came up, and then they would say, okay, we need somebody, and you'd run over, and usually it was to, what do you call them, carry in or carry over boys, I think is what they called them. And so the guys would be at their station, the artisans, and he was one of the ones that would go up and collect the piece and then take it somewhere else, wherever it was. And I guess it was good money back then. I don't remember what he told me, unfortunately, but we're talking like 50 cents an hour or less or whatever. Oh, crazy money. But yeah, so that's our little Fenton story. And and you might be interested in this story too. Another Fenton story that I have from him. He went to high school there in Williamstown, and one of the teachers one fall didn't come back to school. He was no longer working there, and so everybody was wondering what happened to that teacher, and they discovered that he married one of the Fenton um, girls, and it was almost like a royal wedding kind of thing, if you'll hang on with my analogy, because he married into the family because he had the recipe for ruby glass. And so and so they married in
Oh,
so that they could get the recipe for the ruby glass, which I thought was really kind of an interesting story.
that is fascinating. I love that. Both of those stories are really good. And it's so cool that your dad did that and was able to take you and show you because it was good work. I mean, it's actually a shame those jobs have been lost because glass factory jobs were good. And a lot of people who where unskilled labor could make good money and really become craftsmen and craftswomen and artisans. And so, but that's just really neat. I love both of those stories. And I didn't know that about the ruby. I know that all the companies were very anxious to get the formula for ruby glass that didn't require them to use gold because it was so expensive to make. And everybody loved red, but they didn't make
Right,
money on it because it cost too much.
right. And I don't know if the formula that the guy had in his family that they married to get. I don't know if that one was like a sought after one without the gold or was with the gold, because I do remember my dad talking about how there was gold in the glass mixture. I remember him telling me about that too. So yeah, interesting.
They had to use gold to get cranberry glass. They
All
never could figure out how to do the cranberry without it.
right. All right, next up, I have these pieces that were in there. There's two saucers. They're not the same. And then there's a little teacup as well. And I'll show you the bottoms in a minute. I think that actually is one of the, I take all this stuff out. So yeah, no markings on the bottom of that one. But the two plates, I think both say Japan on the bottom.
Oh yes, they're going to be. It's Geisha Girl, and it was a very popular pattern. Now, I was hoping when you lifted the bottom of the cup that maybe we would see a geisha's head in the bottom, because they did make them that way too. But these originally came out in the mid 30s, about the same time that a lot of lusterware that people are collecting now are interested in. And geisha's a popular pattern, but they made a lot of it, and so they're not super valuable. Probably about $6 would be retail on the little plate, and maybe 9 or 10 on the cup and saucer. Yeah, and they're actually from different eras. Your cup and saucer are before the Second World War, and then the one on the right, the little plate, was from the 50s.
Okay. And then this was another one too. I didn't know if this was anything. I had seen writing on it. It's funny, I couldn't see the writing well until I turned the camera on it. So I don't have any idea why that writing was there, but I just pulled it out.
Well, that's a nice burl. It looks like maybe a maple burl, and those are artisan made. So that's something that a woodworker made and sold at a craft show or an art show or a street fair. So that's the writing. And I really like that type of thing and have a lot of respect for it, but it's not old enough to really have a secondary market yet. So the values aren't really high. When I have that at estate sales, I usually put about $10 or $12 on a piece like that, because there's no connoisseurship for those yet. People don't really keep track of, oh, this guy was really good and he has a name and that sort of thing.
Right.
But it's really cool stuff, and it's good work.